Okay. How is everybody? Welcome back to class. I'm trying to think what week this is. I want to say week 5. Yeah, I think we're already in week 5. Okay, so a couple quick reminders. At this point, I have given you, all of you who have submitted a first draft, feedback on that draft, and you have till a week from Sunday. So the due date is listed on Canvas to submit your final draft. And you'll only get a grade that's other than 0 if you submit that final draft. Okay. So I've decided not to run a discussion board that's due next week, but you will have a new set of reading questions. So next week you'll have 2 major assignments. You'll have to do that new set of reading questions, and you'll also have to write that final draft. The questions will be due Thursday. The final draft will be due next week on Sunday. Okay, at least next week in terms of how the class runs. Yeah, you know what I mean. So, all right. So, what I want to do here is just introduce our next topic, which is on theories of personal identity. I've given a really detailed overview and written response to this week's topic and questions, like I do every week. And I would say this week especially, you want to go look at that document carefully. There's a lot of different theories flying around, and it's I think would be a little chaotic to go through each and every one on the board, but I do it in the writing, at least at the level of depth. The textbook does it, and I explain some background, some concepts that you're going to need. So this video, I'm glad you're watching it. All I want to accomplish here is just explaining what a theory of personal identity is and why it raises puzzles. Again, for the more detailed analysis, please go look at the written responses to the questions that I posted. And hopefully you're doing this every week, because those written responses in this video, of course, it replaces our class time together. Okay, now, you're born and you live hopefully to about 80 years old or so. Around the age of 3, maybe even a little earlier, 2 to 3, you're uncontroversially a person. You have certain higher level rationality abilities have been attained. You've attained a certain level of rationality. You have a robust personality, which reflects beliefs about the world, introversion, extroversion tendencies, preferences, desires, all that sort of stuff. It's pretty active, clearly, as early as the age of 3, and maybe even a bit before that. So the puzzle, we'll talk more next week about how we define what a person is. But let's just go with our common sense idea. Persons are creatures with personality. It typically involves emotion, social ability, and some higher level intelligence constraints. So mice, for example, they're conscious, they're social, but they're not really rational enough to be persons. So we don't think of mice as persons. A dolphin, a chimpanzee, a dog, that's more of a borderline case. They may very well be non-human persons. Okay, now, our focus this week is primarily on the question. So if you start off a person, start you off at 3 years old, what keeps you the same person through time? Okay, so I'm 45 already, so that's pretty been a long time, 42 years. So if I look at pictures of me, though, as a 3-year-old, I say, hey, that's me. I'm sure you do the same with yourself, in reference to yourself. So what's held constant, if anything, between now and then, that maintains the continuity of personhood? So one suggestion is that's the same body, right? So through time, I've always lived in the same body. That's kind of true, but also kind of false, right? So every atom in your body gets replaced at least once every 7 years. The cells in your central nervous system largely survive. Every other cell in your body gets swapped out for new cells, but even your central nervous system cells, they swap out their atoms. So at the unit of the cell, they keep living, but you get total atomic replacement through time. So there's literally not an atom in my body now that was present then. Also, my psychology, my mind, at least my mental content and my mind's abilities, that's radically altered as well. So as a 3-year-old, I had the IQ of a 3-year-old. I had the interests, the desires, the questions of a 3-year-old. As a 45-year-old, that set has greatly expanded, and a lot of the interests, desires, questions, preferences have simply dropped out. So if you compare my psychology now to my psychology then, of course, you can run this in the first person, compare your own psychology at whatever age you are to your psychology as a three-year-old, and you'll see radical shifts and transitions. So it seems that both the mental aspects of ourselves and the physical have undergone somewhat radical change. Okay, now, other ways to approach the question. Could I survive the complete and total loss of my memories? Just picture total amnesia. I don't know who any of my friends are, my family, my wife, my kids. I have trouble even remembering my own interests, and all my episodic memories from the past, they're completely gone. So in a sense, you could picture my mind brain has been wiped clean of its memories. You might think that's a form of death, that a person, an individual person, can't survive that. That if you think about it hard enough, what's happened is the original person is actually gone, and a similar person has taken their place. So when we look at John Locke's view, he actually focuses heavily on the criterion of memory, and he argues for just such a conclusion. But you might also think that's incorrect, that a person can survive the total loss of their memories, because maybe their basic personality type and interest stays intact. They just don't quite remember what those were or are, and it takes a little bit just to regain that sense of self. But maybe it's the same self one is becoming acquainted with as before the memory loss. Okay. Okay, so what we're looking for, whatever theory is proposed, is a set of conditions that are both necessary for being the same person through time and sufficient. And go read the handout on that. I do a really thorough job laying that out. The book spends a lot of time on it. It's good to get that double exposure. But briefly, a necessary condition for remaining the same person through time would be a condition that has to be in place. Okay, so if Locke's right, and continuity of personhood involves continuity of memory, then it's necessary that I retain my memory through time in order to remain the same person. But we also want a set of conditions that is sufficient. So, and sufficient basically means enough. So we're looking for the necessary conditions, the ones you have to have, remain the same person through time, and we want to get all of them. So they're sufficient for grounding personhood through time. Analogy I often use in my live classes is think of like, I'll just use this bottle, right? So if I were to just paint the bottle cap a different color, you'd probably say something like, same bottle, but the cap has just been colored. So that's a change that this individual bottle can survive. And if you don't think of the cap as part of the bottle itself, just imagine I've painted, this little Gatorade sticker area. But if I start ripping out huge chunks of the bottle and replacing them with replacement plastic, you might think at some point, well, wait a minute, that's not the same original bottle. That's actually a second individual bottle that has replaced the original. So when we're thinking about maintaining personal identity through time, we're trying to think, well, what could we lose and still be the same person? In common speech, people might say, oh, I'm a different person now, but they don't literally mean they died and a different person took that original individual's place. They just mean they've undergone great change. We're actually focused on the survival question. What needs to be in place to literally remain the same person through time? Okay. Like I said, I spent a lot of time this week, and especially large amount of time filling in information in my own responses to those reading questions. So please read that written document. You get a lot of overview on the topic, and I, trace the path the book has carved, looking at a bunch of distinct views, and just giving some commentary. If having heard this video and read through the document, if there's any questions you can think of, please email them, because that's always good for furthering understanding. Okay, so next week, again, actually, this is my second take on this video, so I forgot if I've mentioned this yet. So next week, you won't have any discussion boards due during next week, because you have to write your final draft, and you also have to complete next week's new set of reading questions. So those are your two major assignments for next week. So yeah, email me with any questions, and I will talk to you in about a week. All right, thank you.